Well, thank you so much for joining us again for this segment in the Blueprint 2. My name is Lawrence Wilbon. I'm the Director for Program and Business Development for Fathers Incorporated. And I am here with two esteemed guests that are going to help me talk about Black men, mental health, and community resources that are available to them, to us, I should say. Our guest today, we have the founder of the Confess Project, Lorenzo Lewis. Lorenzo uses a moniker, a philosophy, if you will, that has transformed his life. And it says, turn your pain into purpose. And so he's a social entrepreneur, and he's had decades of experience of behavioral health, which led him to start the Confess Project, which is a unique program in itself. And I'll let him just describe that in just a minute because I don't want to steal his thunder. Secondly, we have who's no stranger to Fathers Incorporated and into the world, I should say. We have Dr. Jeff Gardere, who's known as the America's Psychologist. And so Dr. Jeff will be joining us and sharing from his experience. He's a board-certified clinical psychologist, assistant professor and course director of behavioral medicine, cultural competency and behavior and public health at Touro College. I hope I said that correctly. And he is a native of Brooklyn. I didn't get where Lorenzo's from, but I'm sure he can kind of share where he's from when he takes the floor. But I hope you all enjoy this healthy dialogue, because one of the things we realize is that if we're not having these conversations, no one's having these conversations. And so I'm glad that these two men are here with us who are well capable of spending time with us and giving us insight on what we need to do to make sure that we're mentally well. So at this time, we're going to ask if Lorenzo will come off mute and actually just share with us a little bit about the work that you're doing, and then let's talk a little bit about what the Confess Project is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks again, Lawrence and Dr. Gardere. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you, to learn from you as well. I'm a native of Little Rock. So deep South guy, of Arkansas. And so I'm really excited to always share about not only the work that we do, but why it's really important to myself and why I think it's really changing the lives of many Black men across the United States in this moment. I always explain the story that my life started in a prison. My mother was incarcerated when I was born. And that in itself really, I like to think, set me up for a lot of challenges later on. When you think about poverty, when you think about lack of education, lack of generational wealth, a lot of those components really set me up to have the challenges that I faced. And so I faced incarceration also at the age of 17, being involved in gangs, street violence, the list goes on and on. And so in that moment, the judge gave me a second shot at life. I promised her that I would never return and that I would spend the rest of my life serving. And so years after my release, I went to work at a juvenile detention center. And then that led me to working in the mental health industry, particularly as, doing case management and direct service work. That work really inspired me because I was able to see another side of myself that I didn't think was ever possible. And so serving those patients, clients, children, families from the age of 5 to 65 really inspired me to do the work that I do now. And so that commitment allowed us to birth the Confess Project, which is America's first mental health barbershop movement, in which we train barbers to be mental health advocates. I was really inspired by the idea because as a kid, my aunt who took care of me allowed me to come to the beauty shop every day. And that's really where I felt like I got the grooming, the nurturing connection, was also meeting my first mentor who was a barber there in the shop. Roughly about 45 stations there, located here at a very busy intersection here in the Metro Little Rock area. And it really was just a game changer, right? And so connecting that to my lived experiences, my professional experiences, I knew, in fact, someone who was diagnosed with clinical depression, come from a family line of folks with HIV, substance abuse use, and incarceration, that I knew, in fact, that we could really change this work by the childhood experience that I had in the beauty salon. And so that's how the Confess Project started. By having a relationship, it allowed us to now train over 600 barbers in 35 cities to be mental health advocates. And it's simple as being what? Being an advocate, being a great listener. So our curriculum entails active listening, validation, communication, and how to reduce stigma. This work has been validated not only by Harvard University, but it's really been validated by the men that are serving countless clients, over 100 a month, through their chairs of just listening and giving our community resources. We link every barbershop with a clinical therapist in the local area. We have a therapist directory. We also host focus groups every month to connect those men to promising ways of bettering themselves, their families. Our work is also tied into supporting the families, the backbone of parenting through barbershops. We really feel like Dr. King's message of unifying our communities truly have to start with village care. So the village care work that we do in our barbershops have really become a phenomenon. And I think the work is continuing to go forward. And so that's a little bit about me, why I was inspired. I was truly inspired by my own pain that I faced, a generational line of trauma that went through my family, and a little bit of professional experience that I was able to gaze. But I saw such a gap in the industry. And let's be mindful, because I never became a clinician. I think I was able to see a little bit more in depth for someone who went through recovery in addition to serving the patient population. So I think that's where I really, a lot of people say, where did the genius lie? I think that's where it lied. It lied between, the pain to understanding the purpose in this. And so I think that's the connection of how I've been able to be a part of this work. And I know this work is happening abroad, across the United States, internationally as well. And we want to recognize those folks that are putting in tireless hours of supporting our Black men across barbershops and doing a lot of health-driven work. That's a little bit of, in context, what drives us is knowing that our innovation can eventually be shared through evidence-based science is what we're working through now, and to seeing that this can be a standard, across the country. So we're really grateful for our partnerships, governmental partnerships, foundation partnerships that will allow us to see that through. And other than that, I think we're in a bigger fight for asking more people to join the fight, to seeing how we can all change the world together and do beautiful things. So really excited to be here. Would love to just learn more about what Dr. Gardere's, his contributions, as we know, is really great, and what Fathers Incorporated is doing with Black men, I know through barbershops and with children. We truly respect their work, and a very great respect, because you all have really laid the groundwork for the work that we do, very, very prematurely, just over the last 5 years. So again, really, really grateful to be here.
Oh man, thank you so much. That you shared a lot of information today, and really, I'm over here taking notes, and so I'm excited about the work you're doing, and so grateful that one of the things you said that has stuck out to me is I can't get rid of it out of my head, is turning your pain into purpose, and being able to have your lived experience and the things that you've dealt with move you to this place where you're now in a place where you're now advocating and helping others that may also be in the same place. So thank you for sharing that. I'm looking forward to getting more acquainted as we go further into our conversation. Dr. Jeff, if you can come off mute and let's talk a little bit about the work that you're doing or that you've done, that you're doing, and kind of set the groundwork of who you are for our viewers.
Well, first of all, I want to say to Lorenzo, God bless you, brother, and thank you for what you're doing for smashing the stigma around addressing mental health issues and talking about the things that in many ways have been so painful for us, turning that pain into purpose. I think, just like you said, Lawrence, I think that is absolutely, that is more than a moniker. That is in many ways a mantra that I think a lot of us need to follow. So I thank you for that. I also thank you, Lorenzo, because you are bringing up a new generation who is dealing with mental health as something that is vital and that we need to talk about. This is back when I was coming up, back in the day, we just didn't talk about these things. And to be a psychologist, really, you worked in an area that was at times very lonely, because when I started working with people of color, there were not many folks who wanted to pursue therapy, who wanted to talk about some of these issues. We looked at it from a larger, more of a macro kind of level as to what racism was doing to our mental health, what it was doing to our bodies, how it was really killing us. So the actual one-on-one therapy, and in the case of the barbershop work that you're doing, where you have these trained individuals who are listening to these folks and directing them in a way that is positive, I think is fantastic. In many ways, it is kind of a new therapy, and I know you don't call it therapy, which is great, because you're calling it what it is. It's being there to be an ear, to coach others, and so on. And I wish we had had that when I was coming up, because then we would have gotten more people into therapy. And I would think, Lorenzo, that's probably a stepping stone for a lot of the folks to go from the barber chair into the therapist chair, if it takes, if they go in that direction. So thank you for that. I've been doing this work, I don't know, since 1978, a long time. And I began doing that work in therapy offices. I began doing that work as a clinical psychologist on TV, on early shows, and so on, where a lot of people, Lawrence, were very upset that a psychologist, a licensed psychologist, would do that, that kind of work. As we know now, this is a way to be able to appeal to the masses. So I'm very proud of doing that work. These days, more than anything else, I'm teaching medical school. You talked about Touro. I work at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine as an associate professor and course director, teaching behavioral medicine to medical students, to pharmacy students, working with a PA program soon at Touro, working across different campuses. So, a lot to carry, but I'm very proud of that work, because basically what we're doing is we're training these future physicians to be more culturally sensitive and more culturally competent. If we can do that, if we can get more people of color into the medical schools, if we can talk to more of the students who are not just of color, but who are white students and international students, about cultural competence, slowly but surely, we can begin, erasing a lot of the health disparities that have put us more at risk for COVID-19 and all sorts of other health issues. So it's going to take a multi-pronged sort of approach to be able to eventually get people of color and all people, but in this case, people of color, to a place psychologically where they can be strong, where they can address their issues. So in many ways, Lorenzo, I really feel that, we are brothers in what we're doing. And I would like for us to continue doing that work and have more of intersectionality of that work, and something we can definitely talk about at some point. And where's the TV show? Right? Therapeutic barbershop. Don't get me started.
No, absolutely. I think, I think, Dr. Gardere, I think the opportunities that we really, let's be frank about it. We started this work by we simply led into storytelling. We took the art of storytelling, and we were able to really meet our brothers and sisters where they were. As we know, our sisters are stylists, barber stylists in the shops. We have children and single mothers and fathers, etc. So we were able to use the art of storytelling, knowing that we have come from these similar conditions, right? We know what it feels like to, to go to church and to know that was maybe our only outlet when in fact it wasn't, right? To know that there was therapy and other things outside of that. In fact, to know that when somebody dies, that grief is a real thing, that it takes time to process grief, and going to counseling, for the way that you was treated as a child, or the way that you was verbally abused or physically abused. And so, I think that our brothers and sisters really understood that colloquialism, and those that, felt a sense of comfort knowing that, we were speaking from experience. Yes. And so I think that's what's been able to, so now we're sharing that this is the art of how we started this movement. And this is also how we have to continue it, because it doesn't stop with, what we've started is now something that should be passed along to others. That's the work that you've been able to do historically for, 30 plus years. And so I think that, that's what we're hoping to inspire. Again, as you said, a younger generation. We train at barber schools, and we work with, so we're talking about young people that are also even coming out of prison. We work with co-op programs that young Black men are getting out of jail, and this is their only way to get into employment, knowing in the barbering industry, that's an industry they can go in and have ownership and make cash flow. And so I think we're on the front lines of reaching, obviously, a group of people we know that's very hard to reach, and getting them into getting the help that they deserve. But I think doing it at a level that they can understand it. And I think that's what really matters. And what's so exciting is I get to link up with great people like yourself, and figure out how do we match that grassroots organizing mechanism with the science, with the medical side of how do we integrate that? How do we, like I said, how do we create the intersectionality where it becomes a ripple effect, long term? And so that's the work that I'm really inspired by, my public health folks and my folks in the medical field, and, clinicians, because I believe that we're going to need them, obviously, to help connect what we're trying to do. Because we're simply just, again, we're building the efficacy. We're making sure that our quality control and that our work is really centered in compassion and love. But,
so let me ask you this: how many barbershops are you in right now where you have trained barbers in listening skills?
Oh, wow. So 600 barbers, 35 cities. We're probably roughly over, I would say well over 40, 50 shops. I mean, we're talking, some of these shops have a minimum of 4 barbers to 10 barbers, depending on chairs. This is also including barber schools. So we probably got over 10 to 12 barber schools. That's spanning from Mississippi through the East Coast, through Compton, in Atlanta. Obviously we have our core work is really done in Atlanta, and done in California, and done here in Arkansas. And so we also work in other metro cities like Boston, New York. We're in partnership with folks like Gillette. So we do a lot of work also on the East Coast, between Jersey, New York, and Boston, the greater Boston area. But yeah, around that number, I had to really go back and really count that, but roughly definitely over 40, 50 shops. Definitely did the math, about 10 to 12 schools. We also have, we have a lot of barbers that come by way that train online with us through a self-paced course. And so some of those guys just come in, so yeah, to answer your question, somewhere around those numbers, to give you an idea of kind of the brick and mortar setup and how this actually set up.
So I had a question. So thank you both for kind of sharing a little bit of the work that, or a lot of some have been a little extensive. So that's good. That's going to lead me right into my question. So based on your professional experience, what are you all hearing out there in community when you're around this idea of mental health? What are some of the things that are happening that's causing, I'm gonna use Black men because that's what we're talking about today, Black men to begin to start feeling like they need to start having this conversation around their mental health? Dr. Jeff, what are you hearing out there right now? What's the pulse of the community?
Well, what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, obviously, is that there is an assault against people of color since the pandemic. With regard to how the world is being turned upside down, and we see voter suppression is starting to happen in some particular states. And just because you see it in some particular states, it doesn't mean that it's only happening there. You know, this is a ripple effect that we're seeing from the pandemic. That, you know, we're having more poverty, more racism, more white supremacy, and all of those things are impacting people of color. They know that things have kind of they've slid backwards, if you will. People feel very, very unsafe. People of color feel very unsafe in this particular environment. LGBTQ plus of color. Transgender women of color, transgender men of color, feeling very, very unsafe. And so that's part of what, you know, that continued threat as to what can happen to them, whether they get into a car and have a confrontation with a police officer that is not deserved, or whether, you know, it's someone hurling insults at them. We've seen what's happened to Asian Americans, 137% increase in hate crimes against them because of the politics out there of trying to blame people for what's happened in the pandemic. We've seen what's happened in some states where they've tried to blame people of color for not being vaccinated. So these are some of the things that I think that are causing a lot of stress for individuals. Of course, we know that the suicide rates have gone through the roof for Black men. Young Black men. We see that it's dramatically increased for young Black women. And a lot of that we feel has to do with generational racism and trauma, but a lot of that being in neighborhoods where they do not feel safe, where they either are direct victims of violence, gun violence, or they're witnessing that gun violence, and it's putting them in a place where they are developing post-traumatic stress disorders and so on. So those are the things that I believe are really starting to push people, and I'm glad that they're coming either to the barbershops or to my office or to the emergency rooms or wherever they have to go to address their mental health issues.
Absolutely. You know, this topic is dear to me because I've always been that person that championed the need for mental health services. I've always been that person. But as I think you said earlier, Dr. Jeff, just as the Confess Project, we're now removing the stigma of black men, Black people in general, but Black men looking for that needed help. And that leads me to my next question. You mentioned a lot there in your answer around the pandemic, around the social injustices. Lorenzo, when you're training these barbers in the barbershop, from a clinical standpoint, Dr. Jeff shared what he's hearing. Are you all hearing the same things? Are you all hearing some of the same things that are causing the need for these type of services for Black men?
Absolutely. No, I think Dr. Jeff couldn't have said it any better. What I also hear more than anything, and I think a lot of this is, it's a sense of comfort and relationships, and I think also connection to a majority field of white professionals in the mental health space. And so I think what we hear a lot is, well, I'm not comfortable, or I'm not, talking with a, what they say, a shrink, right?
Mhm.
I'm not crazy. I'm not, and a lot of it is their financial means is more important than their health. And so, the instant gratification of social media and technology and validation externally with the public and with their peers, and that has actually become a phenomenon that I think we have to address during our work around why it's important to center your mental health, because if you do not, you will lose this barbershop, right? Like, you will lose clients. In fact, you will be underemployed, if not unemployed. You will not be a business owner any longer. So we've had to, we're doing very hygienic steps, right, around going to get simple help around their well-being, going to address relationships from being a child, with their mother, and why they can't trust their wives or trust other Black women or whatever the case may be. I'm talking about real, what we may think, to us, to myself rather, is, oh, that's something easy to do. But to these guys, it's not an easy task. So we have a lot of, that's why we say stigma reduction work, because we're trying to remove stigma before we actually escalate them to getting help, because some of these folks, again, they don't even go and get their blood pressure checked, right? They don't even go to the doctor by means going to see a therapist at a brick and mortar with a couch. And so, some of our research work, and I think long term, as my visionary mindset, I always think, how do we kind of turn this industry into intersecting, like Dr. Jeff said earlier, to a therapeutic barbershop, whether that's validated through, our healthcare system some kind of way. Because in our data, we noticed that 90% of the barbers stated they rather have that help in the shop rather than going to get it at a clinic. So,
and isn't that fascinating though, when you really think about it, right? So you're putting Lorenzo and Lawrence. Lorenzo is putting out these frontline workers who are asking questions as to what it is that these their customers are experiencing. What are the red flags that would engender more discussion? What are the referrals they can give them? So, I mean, you think about it. I mean, it's, you use the word visionary, and this is a visionary thing that you have put together, Lorenzo. I mean, I'm really just blown away by this. We're talking about people going in who are getting groomed, who are, getting a haircut. But as they're getting that haircut, their beards taken care of, whatever the case may be, you're going in deeper into what's going into that person's, what's going on in that person's head. So you're clearing the way in many ways to be able to get into what is going on, how you introduce them to the therapeutic process. So that's one thing which is really fascinating, because you have all these foot soldiers out here who are addressing all of these mental health issues and making these individuals more comfortable about addressing their lives. But then think about it financially. What are you doing for these barbershops and for these barbers? Talk about customer satisfaction. Talk about, what, I want to go in and get a haircut or go in and get a trim or whatever the case may be, because not only do I get this haircut or a shape up or whatever it is, right? But then I also get a chance to talk. Yeah. I get a chance to get someone to listen to me. Maybe the person in the next chair, now we got a little group therapy thing going on, because the barbers are actually directing it and keeping it therapeutic. And the barbers don't even have to use that term therapeutic, but it is therapeutic what's going on. Yeah. And so, it is such a healing, an invisible healing force that is going on in these barber shops, that's going on in the beauty shops. Now the question is, Lorenzo, which industry do you go into next? Do you go into the bartenders? Do you go into, people where anyone has to share some time with someone should be trained in seeing the red flags, in making referrals, in looking for keywords to engage them in discussion in something therapeutic. It's absolutely brilliant. When you go to Wall Street, I'm in, I'm buying. I just think I'm just amazed by all of it. I really am.
It's absolutely. It's one of those community resources, and I want to kind of lead us into that. It's one of those community resources that a lot of folks are not aware of yet. And I think, Lorenzo, to Dr. Jeff's point, I think the resources that you're bringing through the Confess Project is going to be known by much more folks before it's said and done with. So speaking of those community resources, what other community resources are out there for individuals that you all can kind of, share with folks that are viewing? If we know the Confess Project is doing that work in the barbershop, where else can folks get help to kind of deal with and address their mental well-being?
Listen, I'll tell you, there are many, many services that are out there. I'm actually working with a company out of Texas called My Telemedicine, and we're offering therapy services to folks online. It's so easy, but I can tell you that there are many other services that it's so easy to get online. I want you to come to My Telemedicine, but it's easy to get online and do that. There is, in addition to that, we are seeing now the pharmacies are actually going to start having therapy services available. Some of the big box stores are going to have to start, are having therapists working out of the place. Can you imagine? Talk about one-stop shopping.
Yeah,
you can go buy underwear, and at the same time, the old underwear song, "You've changed." You've changed. You've lost that sparkle in your eye. But you can go out shopping for whatever it is you need to get, and then stop in and see a therapist. So what I really see is what the Confess Project has done. They've brought it to the masses. But, we can see that now mental health is so huge. There isn't any place that you can't go at this point to get services. And so, it's just doing your research and getting out there, but you can find services in many, many different places, including a lot of your inner city community mental health programs too.
Nice. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if I could share as well, Lauren, I think what a few kind of community resources that may be available. There's an organization they're based out of California, but they do work nationally, training work around like a healing justice framework called BEAM, Black Emotional Mental Health Collective, led by founder Yolo Akili. And they do a lot of work around supporting, Black folks, Black men, with like yoga and like access to therapists. They do a lot of like literacy work. So like they do a lot of kind of digital literacy work around helping people to process their feelings and emotions, like acronyms like how they feel, but how they can like process through these things, and using social media to its benefit to really reaching folks, speaking to their level. I also even supporting like single mothers with children that have mental illnesses, have a mental illness disorder. So like those are, I think really standout things that I've seen, very unique scholarships and a whole lot of other things, doing work in helping supporting Black folks that are coming out of the psychiatric institutes, on the ground. So that's one organization I think that's doing some courageous work. Also, I want to speak to an organization out of Philadelphia. And I think they're looking to kind of figure out some national opportunities as well as Black Men Heal, that I know do see Black men for free therapy appointments. And so I don't know their process of how clinicians are aligned, but I do know they typically have a wait list. But I think they can get up to like 5 to 6 therapy appointments. And so that's one group. You have, it's a few others out there that I know that's, and I know Beam support our LGBTQ plus communities as well. I know Black Man Heal does also. So these are just some community-led organizations that I think folks can reach out. I also know they're in the heart of Atlanta. Silence the Shame is doing a lot of great work around mental health resources. I know we're looking to possibly work with them in the future. They're really building a collaborative, even working more with Fathers Incorporated around how we can connect to. I know one of our next moves is to bring in we're invested in Atlanta so much. We want to bring in a local, possibly looking at our local leadership being placed there, because we've just gotten so much tremendous support from organizations, partnerships in Atlanta. It's a high need for the work there. I also think that's going to be where we can really show the world we can do national work from Atlanta because of the high volume of Black men that are in the city. So we're really committed. I just wanted to be specific, beyond how we are nationally, but we're really, looking to work with DBHDD on opportunities of how we can make this an evidence-based model, how it can scale nationally and even internationally. Like Dr. Jeff was saying, at some point we can, figuring out unique ways of supporting coaches, bartenders, tattoo artists, whatever that may look like, right? Because these are the folks I believe naturally when I was out, didn't know anywhere to go. I was going to the OG down the street, the drug dealer, that stayed 3 blocks over. I was talking with them, the barber, the basketball player that was popular. That I didn't, that's who I went to. I had a hard time. What you think I need to do? And they didn't have the most advantageous clinical advice sometimes, but these people could very well be, if they're in a position of the recovery, they can very well have advantageous advice to help these young men not go out and commit a crime, not take their life by suicide. Like I know It can happen because I can remember being a part of that. And so that's, that's a whole long vision to think through, but that's very much possible. I feel very much possible.
Absolutely. And I think, both have offered some wonderful resources for our viewers. I would just encourage folks as they're looking for places to connect. As Dr. Jeff said, do your research. It's out there more than ever now. Opportunities and access to is out there more than ever. So as we wrap up, I need just to let people know how they can get in contact with you. How can people find you, Dr. Jeff? How can they find you? And then after Dr. Jeff, Lorenzo, how can they find you if they want to stay in contact?
Sure, they can simply go to drjeffgardere.com, DRJEFF Gardere, GARDERE.com, or just go on to Google. You'll find me.
You'll find it. Thank you. What about you, Lorenzo?
Absolutely. No. We can be found at theconfessproject.com. Also connect with me personally, LorenzoPLewis.com, but the confessproject.com can really help support any of our clinicians and therapists that want to get engaged, and being a part of the network that we're building. Barbers that want to be engaged definitely can be found there on our forum, to seeing how we can build support.
Absolutely. Well, listen, brothers, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for being a part of the Blueprint, and thank you for being such great leaders in your own right and helping to destigmatize, Dr. Jeff, hope I said that correctly, this whole idea around mental health. You are champions, and we celebrate you for what you're doing. Again, everybody, I'm Lawrence Wilbon. I'm the Director for Program and Business Development for Fathers Incorporated. You've been now hit by the Blueprint 2 with our conversation with Dr. Jeff Gardere and Lorenzo Lorenzo Lewis with the Confess Project on Black men, mental health, and community resources. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you.